Hey everybody, it's Bob McCranie with Flee Red States. We are a project of Texas Pride Realty Group, Home Smart Stars here in Dallas and Texas. And I am so happy to have on today Bob Chikos. Bob, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Well, I'm a special education teacher in Illinois, and I'm also involved in education policy. A few years ago, I got involved in a group called Teach Plus, and that gets teachers involved in the policy process. So the founders of Teach Plus said, hey, instead of just having politicians pass laws about education, how about we get people who are actually in the profession get involved? So we got trained for that, and I've been doing several projects through them. One I have, it's an idea I have on my own, but my training through Teach Plus really helped me. And that was essentially to let teachers in red states that are oftentimes hostile towards education, hostile towards women, hostile towards LGBTQ folks, just hostile in general, show them that there may be a path for them to come to a state like Illinois. Specifically, mine is Illinois because that's where I'm based out of.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you're trying to help teachers from red states go to states where they would be a little freer to teach and be themselves.
Correct.
Yeah, interesting. So right now, there's about 140 bills in the Texas legislature aimed at the LGBTQ community. How is Illinois different?
Illinois is like in the opposite direction. Our governor Pritzker is very supportive of LGBTQ rights. Right now, we're in the legislative session. There are constantly bills coming up to actually further protect the rights of transgender folks in particular. So he's very supportive. He came to the Equality Illinois Gala last year. Talked to him. I actually talked to his wife, our First Lady of Illinois, and she said, "Hey, this is one of his top priorities, is protecting the rights of Illinoisans."
Interesting. Okay, so what have you heard from other teachers in other areas? Have you had people like call you with like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening"?
Not teachers, but I am involved in a group. So I'm not transgender myself, but I do have a transgender loved one, and I am involved in some Facebook groups of people who also have transgender loved ones. And I am hearing of people saying they need to leave their state. They cannot get care for their child, whether it's across the river in Missouri, where they've started a ban, which may actually affect transgender adults as well. Whether it's Florida, whether it's Texas, the news is getting worse every day.
Right.
You know, this is a legislative session, so we're hearing more about it now than other times of the year, but it is draconian. And yeah, I am hearing on a 2-3 times each week basis of another person saying, "I need to get out of here. What's a good state for us to come to?" And going with that, people say, like, "What's Illinois like?" And I say, "Oh, overall, your protections are good. However, just like any place, where you are within the state can be different. So
Right.
if you are in or near the Chicago area, life's pretty good. If you're in other deep red areas of the state, your day-to-day life may not be as supportive."
Yeah. So we kind of had the same thing here. So Texas Pride Realty, I started in 2009 to really kind of serve the LGBTQ and the diversity communities of Dallas-Fort Worth and Houston. And what we used to tell people is, if you move to the large cities, you're fine. If you go beyond, if you go to the rural areas of Texas, you're going to see white power flags, and you're not as safe there. But in the city, you're fine. And what I have some people with the ideology of, well, we live in Montrose, or we live in Oak Lawn area of Dallas, or whatever. We're safe in our bubble. And in Texas, those bubbles are all going to pop.
Right.
There's a bill in front of the legislature right now in Texas that if they don't like the Harris County election results, which Harris County is Houston, very Democratic area. If they don't like the Harris County election results, they can just reverse them.
Wow.
So they're getting to the point that, I mean, it's not even democracy anymore. It's just authoritarianism. Right. And right now, Governor Abbott has signed a bill that said, or signed a executive order that expanded the definition of child abuse to include trans children. So right. If your school nurse or your minister finds out that your kid is considering being trans or is identifying as trans, they have to turn you into the state. Your child can be
Right.
put into protective services and you can be charged as adults as child abusers. Now, one
Right.
judge has stopped it and said, hey, let's think this through. But all it takes is one judge higher to say, no, let it go forward.
Right.
Or
And
for
if you
that
get,
judge to have thought it through and say, yeah, I think it's okay.
Mhm.
I would not be staying and I would be getting out right now. And that's why we're trying to help people, kind of the Rainbow Underground Railroad, get to places that are safer, like your state.
Right. And it's really sad. This is not a place I ever wanted to be in our country. I never wanted us to be in a situation where I'm like, hey, come to my state. I want people to be free wherever they are. I want people to be in Texas and Mississippi and live good lives there.
Right.
I'm not looking to poach anything. I'm trying to help, people say like, I need to get out. Okay, we'll be on the other end of that. We can help you get out.
Right.
And some people are not in a situation where they can do that. And that is the worst situation of all, is somebody they're living paycheck to paycheck. They don't even have, they can't scrape up enough money to, get a moving van and try to find a new job.
Right.
Like, that's a very tough transition.
Right.
It is so sad what is going on in our country.
Right.
But for those who can, we want to be able to say, all right, maybe we can find a way to help you.
Now, in our pre-conversation we had the other day, I think you mentioned that there's a hiring need for teachers in Illinois. Is that true?
Yeah, just like any state, there's a bit of a misnomer, and I study this quite extensively. I'm on several statewide panels that look at this, and I have a bit of a different take than a lot of people when you hear the word teacher shortage. That gets thrown about very loosely. There's not any large scale teacher shortage. That's a bit of a myth. But these articles come out saying that there's a teacher shortage. And when you look at the numbers, there's a shortage of people who are going into specific areas like special education, bilingual education. There's a shortage of people who are willing to work in very rural areas, or what we call hard to staff schools. I always compare it to a food shortage. Do we have a food shortage in this country? Well, no. I mean, we throw out quite a bit of food in our country. People have gym memberships because they try to work off the food that they take in. However, some people can get organic, grass-fed, whatever, the best food that they can possibly get, and money's no object.
Right.
Most of us don't go hungry, but we kind of comparison shop. We don't
go
prime rib every night. Yeah. And then some people are chronically hungry. And that's kind of how it is with schools, where you have some schools there, they get 200 applicants for every position. They can do a filter so they will only look at people who have maybe had Division I athletic experience, would have this many years of teaching. Those are like the affluent suburbs around Chicago. And you get a lot of schools like my school where we get enough to fill our positions. And then there's some schools that they cannot get people to stay.
Yeah.
Or they can't even fill positions in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. And unfortunately, a lot of those areas who cannot staff their schools are the same areas where we'll be looking at for people to move in. So if you're a person in Texas and you think of Illinois as an oasis, yeah, we can find you a job, but it's going to be maybe in an area that's culturally very similar to a lot of these areas in Texas, but you will have like statewide protections.
Right. See, there's the difference. You can live beside people who don't agree with you, as long as your civil rights are guaranteed by the state. And what we find in Texas is that our civil rights are being attacked by the state. So that would be a dramatic difference. I'm not asking the whole world to agree with me. I'm just asking the whole world to agree the fact that I have the right to exist, which my state does not. And Florida and several of the other traditionally red states are going in that direction. My other fear is that with the 6-3 Supreme Court, all the rights for LGBTQ people pretty much are from Supreme Court decisions. We have very few rights that went through the Congress and signed by a president and became law. Okay, most of our rights are Supreme Court decisions, 5-4 decisions. Now they have a 6-3 court in their favor. And in the decision that overturned Roe, Clarence Thomas said, hey, I'd like to see the Obergefell case and I'd like to see the Lawrence v. Texas case brought back. because that's gay marriage and the reversal of the sodomy laws. And I have, Ken Paxton in Texas, the Attorney General, saying, yeah, we'll do that. And we have, Ted Cruz, who's running for his office again this year or next term, saying, yeah, I agree with that. That's completely, we should bring those back. So what happens when the nation says no state can protect marriage, or no state can, what happens when it becomes a national situation where states are prohibited from protecting?
Right. Yeah. Because the whole premise of overturning Roe was that they're going to leave it to the states, put it back to the states to be able to regulate it. And so, like, Illinois is actually, we've entrenched our reproductive choice laws, and Texas has gone on. So, like, right now we can say, hey, Illinois is an oasis.
Right.
But it seems like when something would benefit the conservatives to have a state by state basis, they're all about states' rights. But when they, it would benefit them, or they're in the position to do something on a national level, they'll do that as well.
Yeah. We've started a new branch of this whole project now called Flee United States. Because at some point we may have to look at there is a migration happening right now.
Right.
It's not being talked about enough, but there is a migration happening. What happens when that migration is no longer to a blue state, but to Portugal, to Mexico, to the UK, to Ireland, to Canada? Yeah, all these places that actually do ensconce LGBTQ rights in their documents. We have this ideology that we're loyal to the land. That my grandpappy died here, and we're going to be, and at some point, I think states should have to cater to us. If they want our money, they should give us our rights. Right. It's just like if you go to a restaurant. If you go to a bad restaurant and you have bad food, you're not going back to that restaurant. You go to a restaurant that does cater to you. States should do the same thing.
Right.
And when I say states, I mean countries.
Right.
So, and school districts, to your point.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So if somebody wanted to reach you, how would they contact you?
What
email would you be confident?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't really want to put my personal email out there just yet. Like, if somebody sees a podcast, maybe they could contact you, and then you kind of pass the information on to me, then kind of act as a bit of a screener. I'd be fine with that. I put a link to the Flee Red States on some groups I'm with, and wow, a lot of realtors came out of the woodwork. They said, I'm a realtor. This sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
Agents.
Have them contact me.
Yeah. I put your contact information on there, and I give them the link to the site. And one is a realtor, another one's a realtor and a real estate lawyer. Definitely interested in helping in any way that they can. We have another parent who's just set up a Facebook page just to help people who are living in states like Iowa, where this parent is from, who they can't move to Illinois, but help them navigate the resources. Because right now the laws in Iowa that it's not illegal to take the transition hormones, but it's illegal to get it prescribed there. So, maybe help people with housing while they stay in like Dubuque, or like across the river from Dubuque for a night to get what they need.
Get the script, yeah.
Yeah, to get resources like that. So they're coming with some pretty creative ways to help folks out.
And so it's going to create that sort of underground movement. It's going to create a black market. It's going to create all sorts of subterfuge and potential for people to be scammed and ripped off, because they can't go to the local pharmacy and get what they need. They're going to have to go get this, under the cover of night situation across the bridge, sort of disenfranchising way of getting their health care.
Right. So if you're in Texas, and let's say you're in the Houston area, it's not just Texas, it's Louisiana, it's Arkansas, like all these states.
Oh, you're insulated. You're so deep in the red.
They got to drive to Carbondale, Illinois to get treatment, and not a lot of people can afford that. So
from a property perspective, let's say that they, that about our abortion law that says if I suspect Sally had an abortion, I can sue her for $10,000 just as a civilian. My fear is they're going to take the word abortion off that and put the word homosexual. And so anybody who's openly gay can be sued for $10,000. And that's not a far stretch, because the abortion law is already there, but they're also, this term, they've got one for librarians. So if there's a book on the library shelf that I don't think my kids should see, I can sue Margaret the librarian for $5,000. I don't sue the city. I don't sue the library system. I sue Margaret, who's over there just stamping books and telling you to shush. I sue Margaret. Okay, that's crap. So when they do this for homosexuals soon, which they will, and the Supreme Court's already said, hey, that law is kind of cool. You know, the state's not enforcing an abortion ban, just people are suing each other. When that happens and gay people wake up even further and say, oh my gosh, I got to get out, their houses will be worth less. Because when you're a buyer and you see 2 male names on that house and you know they got to get out, you're not going to bid as much because they're over a barrel.
All right.
When there's 2 women's names on that house, or you see a dead name, Steve is selling the house, but it's, you know, it's listed under Stephanie.
Yeah.
You know this person is fleeing the state.
Right.
You can get it for a steal.
Right.
That's going to happen. And the property rights of our people will be diminished. And it's just, it's incredible to watch this in slow motion and know where it's going next. Because if you're a student of history, you know how this works. Right.
And it's interesting hearing you talk about these things, because you see this stuff from a realtor perspective, and I see this thing as a you know, family member perspective, as an educator perspective. All these things are kind of coming together. It's like, wow, this is really sucks on many fronts.
Sucks on manyfronts.com.
Yeah, right. I post this idea about helping people come from other states, and one person right away, their response was, nobody's going to come to Illinois because our taxes are too high. I'm like, you have no idea. Like, that's a nice place of privilege there when your loved one is not worried about, you know, or you're not worried about your child being taken away from you because you're supporting them. If the choice is support my kid with transitioning, or they possibly kill themselves, as a parent, you know, money is not, I mean, it is an issue, but like, it's not as big of an issue as your kid.
I won't pay state taxes to have civil rights.
Yeah.
And
the thing about Illinois is every state's taxed. You know, some states, you know, more than others, and Illinois is taxed more than other states. The thing about Illinois is we're very heavily reliant on local property taxes. So if you are in the Chicago area, we have our school systems are very, we'll say, inequitable. We have some of our schools like New Trier and Stevenson. Those are some of the most well-funded schools in the whole country. They have money coming out of their ears. And we have other schools like East St. Louis and North Chicago where they're very low funded. And it's because our local property taxes inordinately fund the schools. So you have communities like North Chicago or East St. Louis where they actually have a very high tax rate, but their properties are worth so little that the schools don't get enough to function. So that's definitely a challenge that we have in Illinois. And
we have that here.
It tends to go along with the, you know, more supportive and less supportive. So another thing that I'm doing is I'm trying to seek out communities that are in more affordable areas that are also welcoming. I know a great example. We have a town in my county. So I live in McHenry County, and it's like a purple county. Like my town went for Biden. I think overall the county went barely for Trump, and they also went barely for Bailey, who was the really far right-wing gubernatorial candidate. Like my community, it's I would say fiscally conservative, socially pretty progressive. But there's a community in the smack dab middle of McHenry County called Woodstock, and Woodstock is, I describe it as a little bit of Vermont, right in the middle of our county. Very progressive. Very affordable too, and the train line runs right through Woodstock. So if you work in the city, you can take the train into Chicago, or it's not that far to commute if you live in the northwest suburbs. But yeah, it's still very affordable. So that's one of my projects I'm trying to. Carbondale's another city. Carbondale's in far southern Illinois. That's where Southern Illinois University is. And even though that general region is very, very red, Carbondale is also the first city in Illinois to elect a transgender city council person.
Excellent.
And their newly elected mayor is a woman of color. So it's easy for people in the Chicago area to kind of look down our noses upon Southern Illinois, but those folks are doing battles down there, and they're winning some of those battles, which is great to see. And Carbondale is definitely an affordable city. So I'm really trying to look around and see some more of those kind of pink to purple areas where
Right.
maybe we can attract people, and maybe they can have a positive impact on the cultures there too.
I mean, there's got to be a better world. There's got to be a
Yeah.
better place. And I love hearing from you in a place of welcoming and relative safety, saying it's greener over here, it's better over here.
Right.
Because a lot of us are living in the nightly news of what's being passed, and people like you are the political football again. Every election, somebody's a political football, and it's been us for the last 30, 40 years, among
Right.
others. They're also the illegal immigrants, the people of color. All those communities are political footballs, every political season. And so it's good to hear that there are other places out there. I've also heard Wisconsin is quite good. Do you know anything about Wisconsin?
Overall, yeah, so Wisconsin, it's where my son lives actually. Overall, Wisconsin, a purple state. It's statewide, it's actually a blue state. However, when Scott Walker was governor, they gerrymandered the heck out of it, and so the legislature is still very much red, even though statewide there are more blue voters than red voters.
Yeah.
Tony Evers is the governor. I believe he got reelected too. I may not be accurate on that, but the governor is a Democrat, and they had a Wisconsin State Supreme Court election. That was a very important election because if the conservative won, there would have been a conservative majority on the court, and they would have been able to overturn future election results.
Yeah.
That's what could have happened last time when Trump was trying to overturn different states' elections. They could make the argument that the people don't elect a president, that the electors do. That's how it's officially worded in the Constitution. So they could say, we are going to ignore what the several million people in Wisconsin voted for, and we're going to determine it ourselves in the state legislature. And since we're a Republican legislature, we're going to give it to Trump. If the conservative got in there, that's no doubt what they would have done in the next election.
And that's where we look at this. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I say, but fortunately, the progressive candidate won by a significant margin in Wisconsin, which gives me hope that not only was the Supreme Court become more splits on the side of the progressives, but it just showed the enthusiasm of people in Wisconsin to support more progressive candidates.
It's one thing to look at a specific candidate and go, wow, he is so corrupt, or she is so corrupt. There's no way that she doesn't know that they're doing something horrible. When you look at the systematic way that one party is breaking down democracy into small defeatable parts, it's just astounding to watch how this happens. And the Democrats are not prepared for this fight. The Democrats are, I think, still at some point counting on the Republicans coming back to being, normal.
Right.
And what you need to realize is that they've turned into the autocrats, or whatever you want to call them. And they're literally just breaking down chunks of democracy at a time.
Right.
And not giving them back. So, and again, which comes back to, we need to find a better location.
Right.
Because this will not get better, especially in the southern states. It will not get better for decades.
There's if you say a history, there's an organization called Tammany Hall. This is in the 19th century, and very corrupt. And it was, like we say in Chicago, the machine politics, but it was, they ran everything. And they had a slogan was claim everything, concede nothing, and if defeated, allege fraud. And that's exactly what we're seeing from the Republican Party today, is you see Trump claim everything, never takes the blame for anything. And if he loses, he says, that's fraud, and go after it. And you get a lot of Democrats, we had, 3 years of indictments or 3 years of like, when's this going to happen? It gets very frustrating to see this.
I hope Merrick Garland watches this at some point, because maybe somebody could, wake him up.
Right. So Wisconsin in general is one of the better states, but still they they are in process of overturning choice. I don't know if they have or they're in the process of it, because they can override the governor's veto on that.
Yeah.
So Wisconsin is the best of the states that surround us. We're surrounded on one side by Missouri, which I think is second only to Texas in the number of anti-LGBTQ bills that have been introduced in the legislature. But I mean, Texas is what, 4 times as big, as popular as Missouri?
Yeah, but I would think Florida would be right there beside Texas.
Right. You would think, but it's Missouri is the number 2 state. So we have Missouri on one side, on the biggest part of our border, and then other on the east, the biggest part of the border, and is Indiana. And again, they're just passing anti legislation left and right. Iowa, they're same thing. They're passing legislation. Kim Reynolds is all on board. She's the governor of Iowa, all on board with these right-wing groups that, and then the very southern border is Kentucky, which is a very small border with Illinois, but that's one of our neighbors. So of all those states, yeah, Wisconsin is the best of those, but it's still could be better. Yeah.
Your face tells us everything. Yes.
Yeah. And then like in the West, you have Colorado, which seems like an oasis, but surrounded by Utah, Idaho, and
Colorado, New Mexico, and then you get to the West Coast.
Right.
You got to skip it. Oh no, I've heard that Nevada's not bad.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah. And then you're looking at the East Coast, north of Virginia.
Correct.
Yeah. Virginia's purplish.
It can always go either way.
Yeah, Virginia kind of teeters between the two. The northern part of Virginia is very liberal. The southern part of Virginia is very conservative. Right. But yeah, you've got the rest of New England, except for every once in a while, New Hampshire screws with us. But well. Yeah. But literally, that's where we're falling back to. That's where we're, I've got people who moved to Connecticut. I got people who moving to New York. Right. It's just, but we're having to sell our stuff, take what we can get and get out.
Right.
And that's going to be harder over time.
Right. Every couple of days, I see another article about people who are leaving their states. There was an article I saw just the other day, was a transgender nurse who was a traveling nurse. She would go around the country. There's a big demand for nurses. And she's like, I can't do that anymore because my rights aren't protected in other states. So she's stopped that, and she will only practice in Illinois.
Yeah.
I saw an article just a couple of days ago of a school board member in Columbia, Missouri, and she resigned her post because she will not enforce the laws that are being passed in the state. And she says, we will move. She didn't say to Illinois, but she's like, our family's going to move because she has a transgender daughter and needs to support her. Just today, I saw an article about a teacher in Florida who's being under investigation because she showed a Disney film that had a gay character in it to her 5th grade class. And I guess she thought the law was only applied to kindergarten through 3rd grade. And apparently it applied to 5th graders too. So she's being under investigation right now. Yeah. Why stay in these states? I've looked at how much teachers get paid in Florida. It's less than Illinois. So get out. I mean, the winters suck
but
here.
There's no taxes.
Really do, but
it's so sunny. It's like, there's all the reasons you should move to Florida. I get those. But if you're not going to have equality and civil rights, even if you live in Wilton Manor in Florida, which is in, Fort Lauderdale, that's the bubble, their enclave, and DeSantis is popping Disney. They're not going to hold up popping Wilton Manor, right. And sure, Disney is going to fight back. And frankly, I'd put $20 on Disney in the long run, but
it's going to be here long after DeSantis is.
But my point being is your bubbles are not going to exist. And then you're going to suddenly call your realtor, call your neighbor, call whoever, and try to get out. Yeah. People look at me like, I have people in my community here. The head of one of the major businesses in the gay community told me to my face he didn't believe in what I was doing, that we should all stay and fight for Beto. And this is a cisgender gay man who's been in a long-term relationship, already raised their 2 kids, and has nothing at risk. Right. But he has everything at risk.
Right.
But he's standing there telling, oh, Bob, you're just being reactionary and I don't believe in what you're doing. And I'm like, how privileged are you to not be able to see what's going on to everyone around you?
Right. I guess just be like, I hope I'm reactionary. Like, I hope I'm overreacting. But it's not a risk that you can take.
In 20 years, sit me down over a glass of something nice and explain to me how I was wrong, how safe
Yeah,
we all are, and everybody came through it just fine.
Right. There was nothing I would love more than that. I
That
don't
would
see
be
that happening
lovely.
right now. Yeah.
That'd be
And
lovely.
hopefully we're just at a time in history where, like, oh, it's pretty bad, but oh my gosh, we whooped them in 2024. We don't know that. We really don't know that.
I think that we lost as an idea, as a group, we lost when we let Mitch McConnell hold up Obama's last Supreme Court justice. We should have been in the streets. We should have been out fighting, but we all thought Hillary was going to win it and Hillary would appoint and we'd be fine. And when Hillary didn't win it, we should have been demanding McConnell change. Now McConnell had a lock on it.
I really don't think they get in the streets like they're like, okay, have your protest.
But
all they care about
that's where they got the Supreme Court changed over, was holding up Obama's last Supreme Court justice. Because that was, and I love Ruth Bader, but she might have needed to retire when Obama could have replaced her.
Right.
Yeah.
Kennedy as well, I believe.
Yeah. But that's where because like I said, there have been very few rights that came through the Congress to the president to the law. It's all been through the Supreme Court.
Right.
And now we're hosed.
Right.
Now we're hosed.
So with my project, it's really kind of in the beginning stages right now. I am in the research stages with it.
Yeah.
And I'm actually at 5 o'clock today. I have a call with my group that I'm kind of tinkering my project with that. So people are going to give me feedback on what they've seen so far about how to improve it. I have it broken down into like low, medium, and high cost ideas that we can do to attract people to come to Illinois. I actually have flea red states as a thing on there of, hey, maybe we can partner with Bob about how we can help people in the moving process. I have a lot of different ideas in my project there, and we have a deadline with this on August. But my philosophy is like, we need to do this now. So it's.
The legislative session in Texas will go for another couple of weeks. Those bills all have to come out of the legislature. Our legislature, after Reconstruction, we meet every 2 years because they wanted the state to be weak. And those go to the governor's desk for signing. And anything that comes out of the Republican side, the governor will sign. Then the governor can call the session back into a special session if he doesn't like what they did with, and of course, he's got trans kids as one of his number one, flag waving things. So you're right. We need to have this project set up so people can get to Illinois, not just to be teachers, but also get their kids out.
Right.
So anything I can do to help your project, let me know.
Will do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll reach out.
Crossover we can work on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if one plug I want to give it to the LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance. If you've got realtors who want us to be able to refer to them, I want to refer to people who are part of the LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance, because I want to know that they're, on our side.
Right.
Having a realtor call me up and say, hey, I'm Stephanie and I'm in wherever, and I really love what you're doing. That doesn't tell me enough. I need you to have, join the professional association that's really trying to make change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there a teacher alliance? Is there a LGBTQ and allied teacher alliance?
So I'm a member of the NEA, the National Education Association, and within that there is an LGBTQ caucus, and I'm a member of that. And
thank you.
They have quarterly meetings, but they also have their biggest meeting within the Representative Assembly, which actually this year is going to be in Orlando. I was elected as a delegate, but I decided not to go. I just don't feel welcome in Florida.
Yeah.
So I could have gone there, but I decided not to. It's unfortunate. But yeah, there is a professional organization within the NEA for LGBTQ educators and allies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Well, send me those links. I'll put them in the video below. Thank you for being here and doing this.
Yeah.
And let's talk again in a couple of months and see where we're at with all this.
Yeah,
and
we'll
if you
do.
know anybody else who should be on my show, let me know.
Okay. Yeah, I will put my mind to it. I'll let you know.
Okay. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Bye.